How's that for a slice of fried gold?
You think this is a fucking costume? This is a way of life.
I'll be back.
Just a flesh wound. I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains.
Take your sticking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Well, hello, and welcome to Cinema Shock. It's the podcast exploring the stories behind your favorite cult and genre films. We do all the research so that you don't have to. We're the three guys telling you everything you need to know in the most natural way possible about your favorite movies and the people who made them. So that next time you're in a nerdy movie conversation, not only will you know what is going on, you might actually be the expert. I'm one of your hosts, Gary Horn.
And I'm another host, Justin Bishop.
And I'm writer-comedian Mr. Todd A. Davis. Thank you for joining us for our first episode covering the career of filmmaker David Fincher and the Aliens movies that never were. Just remember, in development hell, no one can hear your screenplay.
I like that one.
Yeah, it's all right.
I gave you props, Todd.
Thank you.
I'm just trying to get him to, if I just dog on his work, then it's just going to motivate him to be even better. So even if he's doing well, the next time he's going to try to up his game, you see?
Listen,
I see.
Comedians really can't have people being too supportive of them, otherwise their work just goes to shit. So we need that.
You gotta get brought down to earth every now and then.
Exactly.
So anyway, it has been a while, folks, but welcome to a new full-fledged series here on Cinema Shock, where we are going to be diving into the career of one of our favorite directors. We haven't done this since John Waters back in like October, I think it was, when those episodes were coming out. So for this one, the director that we're going to be talking about for the next 7 episodes is one of the most meticulous and daring directors that we have covered on the show so far, not to mention one of the most successful, with a filmography filled with box office juggernauts and whose work has been nominated for multiple Golden Globes and Academy Awards. But he didn't get to the A-list without working for it. His feature film career started off, let's say kind of rough. And he's had some films that were maybe not as appreciated upon release as they've become as the years have gone by. For this series, we will be discussing the career of Mr. David Fincher in a series that we're calling David Fincher, The Rules of the Game. We will, of course, be starting things off with Fincher's first film, Alien 3. But, as we started working on this series, we realized that before we get to the actual production of Fincher's Alien 3, there is a lot of background information on both Fincher's career and on the multiple versions of Alien 3 that never made it to the finish line. So we'll actually be discussing the story of Alien 3's production in full on our next episode, while this week we're going to discuss kind of everything that led up to it. Now, I will say, before we get into all of this, I want to remind our listeners that if you really want the full story on the Alien franchise so far, we do recommend going back and listening to our episodes on Ridley Scott's Alien and on James Cameron's Aliens, because we're going to talk about a bit of the history of those films here where appropriate, but obviously we can't touch on every detail or we'll be sitting here for 6 hours. But the stories of those two movies really do tie heavily into the story of Alien 3 for obvious reasons.
If you want to feel like you're sitting here with us for 6 hours talking about aliens, though, go back and listen to those episodes, and it'll be like your whole freaking day.
It would. Well, yeah. I mean, I actually released the Cinema Shock Rewind episodes and threw them back up on the feed, so they're right before this episode for your convenience if you do want to listen to them. And I did edit Alien, the first one, back into a single episode instead of 2 smaller episodes, because we were naive back then. We thought that our episodes could all be like an hour and a half, and now that we know that is just not
It's impossible.
Reasonable.
Yeah.
I put them together and it was like 2 hours and 46 minutes, which is a long episode.
Not for us.
No, it's normal. So both of those previous Alien films were produced by Brandywine Productions, which is a production company that was founded in the late 1960s by Walter Hill, David Giler, and Gordon Carroll, with Alien being their first real success. Then the second movie in the franchise, James Cameron's Aliens, it had taken years to develop for a variety of reasons, including a couple of lawsuits. But when it was finally released in 1986, it was a smash hit, both critically and commercially, bringing in somewhere around $180 million on a budget of like $18 million.
Wow.
So naturally, with that kind of success, 20th Century Fox, who had released the film, wanted to start developing further sequels. But Brandywine wasn't totally enthusiastic about the idea of another Alien film because they didn't want to repeat what they'd done in parts 1 and 2, which I think is pretty admirable and somewhat ironic because most producers and studios are really happy to cash in on an existing IP because it's easy money, but also you have to consider that after this, Brandywine pretty much exclusively produced Alien sequels from here on out. I guess after a certain point, they're like, you know what? Who cares if we're just doing the same thing over and over? Yeah. This is a cash cow, so we're going to keep doing it. Yeah, look up Brandywine Productions on Wikipedia or wherever and look at a list of their credits, and it's all Alien movies or Alien versus Predator or whatever. Like everything they do, that's just what they make their money on now. But at the time, I guess they were a little more precious about it. So they said, you know, if we're going to move forward with a third Alien movie, then we want a good reason to do so. They wanted to make sure that there was a story there that was worth telling. So then the question became, if we're going to make a third Alien movie, then what the hell is it going to be about?
I feel like, I guess I get being precious about it, but I just like the movie because of Xenomorphs. So I think Xenomorphs, Aliens, my initial thought would be like, it's tough to go wrong unless you're Ridley Scott and Justin hates everything you do, then you could go wrong.
I'm actually a fan of a lot of Ridley Scott stuff, just not a lot of his Alien stuff post 1970s. But there's a lot that can go wrong with a xenomorph in a movie. I think there have been several movies that have proven that, including maybe the one that we're talking about this week and next week, if we're being honest. So there were a few ideas for this being thrown around, some more interesting than others, but all of them were certainly very unlike the first two films. One of the very early pitches would have seen the xenomorphs invading Earth and fusing together into a giant kaiju that would try to destroy New York, which honestly sounds awesome.
Yeah. I was going to say,
terrible, but awesome.
Yeah.
Another would have featured Ripley and Newt chasing a xenomorph through an off-world city that was described as similar to the city space scene in Blade Runner. So that could have been kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
But
see, yeah, I'm saying I'm already sold. We got 2 sequels right now.
Both of these concepts were abandoned before the producers ever even hired a writer. Like I said, these were just early pitches. But one concept that Hill, Giler, and Carroll wanted to explore was that of the duplicity of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation and why they wanted to use the xenomorphs as biological weapons. Because that's kind of revealed in, Aliens, but it's never really explored as to why, like what are their intentions. So their idea was to figure out, make a movie about why they wanted to study these and reproduce them to begin with. Well, what they came up with was the idea that a faction of militant socialists had broken off from the rest of humanity, and that these space commies, that's a Walter Hill term, the space commies, would be the perfect foil to the aggressively capitalist company, with the two sides developing weapons to fight the other, which was, of course, a clear analogy for the then ongoing Cold War.
Well, so you already have 2 sequels, so that sounds like Alien 5 for me.
So they discussed several concepts related to this idea, eventually deciding to turn this into a 2-part story, a third and a fourth Alien film, with Michael Biehn's character Hicks as the main protagonist of the third film, and Sigourney Weaver's Ripley, who is in a coma during this story, only appearing in a cameo before returning as a lead character in the fourth film, which was being described as an epic battle with alien warriors mass-produced by the expatriated Earthlings.
It just hit me now, though. What are the chances that the cameo would still have to be her in a tank top and her underwear?
I mean, most likely, yes.
Yeah. It seems like the shot they gotta have.
Yep. Right, exactly. Well, one of the reasons that Weaver's role was reduced to a cameo was because Weaver wasn't fully committed to doing a third Alien film, worried that tying the franchise to her character could bog it down. And she was also somewhat upset with Fox about cutting some of her scenes in Aliens that would have expanded on her character's backstory, something that, of course, was later rectified with the release of James Cameron's director's cut. But, if you've seen Aliens or the director's cut, that there's a lot of scenes about, they kind of paint her as they say that she's a mother, that she lost a child during the time that she was in cryo sleep, and that was a big thing that was important to Sigourney Weaver, and all of that got cut out of the theatrical cut, as well as some stuff relating to like her and Newt's relationship in the film, which kind of solidifies her as a mother figure, things like that. Sigourney Weaver loved all that stuff, so she was kind of annoyed that Fox had cut it out of the final product.
It makes sense. She's just trying to give, like, I mean, if she's going to keep playing the same character over and over again, she should want that character has depth, I would imagine.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So 20th Century Fox, they were a little skeptical about the idea of greenlighting 2 sequels, but they agreed to finance the development of the story with the condition that Brandywine at least try to get Ridley Scott to come back and direct Alien 3. And then they also wanted the 2 films to be shot back to back to cut down on production costs, which is something that you see that a lot more now, but not necessarily at the time. Although I know Back to the Future 2 and 3 were done that way, but I don't know of any other examples from this time, like from before this. I can't think of any others.
I don't know that there were enough big productions like that to even warrant something of that size.
I mean, there were definitely sequels. I mean, there were franchises
sequels,
that went on, Star Wars, but there were 3 years in between each of those. Then, you had like RoboCop, I guess, would have been right around this time. But yeah, there wasn't really anything. And then it really didn't happen much again until probably the Matrix sequels. I can't think of any in between Back to the Future and the Matrix.
If you told me that maybe the original Superman movies had been done that way, I could be like, oh, okay, but I don't think that's the case.
I don't think they were.
Actually, yeah, I was going to say, did they not do 1 and 2 that way or something like that?
I don't think so. I mean,
I don't think so.
I don't think so. And 2 and 3 were different directors, so they definitely were not done.
Yeah, I was thinking for some reason they had 1 and 2. Now that you were saying it, maybe I don't know. We'll get to it on the Donner series someday.
Yeah, one day. Well, we've already done Lethal Weapon, so the Richard Donner series is going to have a weird gap in it.
Oh, you're right. We got to figure out some way to do Superman. By God,
we'll figure it out. We'll just do Superman movies. We'll just do the whole Superman franchise one day, including Quest for Peace. Which I'm still hoping movie that destroyed canon films.
I still am hoping for the eventual Jaws series too. So
Oh man, I'm down. I will watch all of those movies, and then all of the Jaws like ripoffs, like Cruel Jaws and what's the blood? I can't remember. Deep Blood, is that the name of it? Anyway, there's a lot of them. Oh, yeah. Orca.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and then you can watch like Grizzly, which is literally Jaws, but just with a grizzly bear.
Yeah. Anyway, where were we at? Oh yeah,
what are we talking about again?
So they contacted Ridley Scott, and he did show some interest in returning to the Alien universe, but he had some different ideas about the story that he wanted to tell. His idea was to set the film on an alien homeworld, expanding on the mythology of the xenomorph species and their origins, a concept that he would later explore with mixed results in Prometheus. Scott, one day we're gonna cover Prometheus, and it's gonna be one of those screenings that I watch it and I'm like, I finally see the light, and I like love it. Like that's what happened with Blade Runner, though. I used to hate Blade Runner; it was boring to me, and now I think it's like a masterpiece. So who knows? So Ridley Scott, though, he was too busy to commit to the project, as he was already developing Black Rain and Thelma and Louise, which forced the production. They couldn't really wait on him; they had to move on without him.
Although he could have just shifted to Thelma and Louise versus Aliens. That would have been
a great sequel, except for the ending of Thelma and Louise doesn't really lend itself to sequels.
Although I feel like let's just keep going could have been said by Hicks. Let's just keep going, man.
That ending happens because there's the one last egg. It's kind of the way Alien 3 actually ends.
That's true. Thelma is pregnant with the alien. Is that what you're saying? At the end of
right. They've got to just drive off the cliff, and it like bursts out of her, like right as they're falling off the Grand Canyon or whatever.
Oh my God! I've come back around. I'm on board with this idea. Actually. So in September of 1987, Giler and Hill approached legendary cyberpunk author William Gibson to write a script. The producers were concerned about an impending writers' union strike at the time, so they asked Gibson to get a script to them, like a first draft to them, by December. So he had, 3 months? He had 3 months to get a first draft of a script to them. And by the way, William Gibson has never written a screenplay in his life at this point. Has no experience writing for movies at all. Jeez. Great writer.
It's the best way to learn.
So Gibson drew heavily on the Giler and Hill treatment, that idea that we talked about earlier with the space commies, and his story picked up immediately after Aliens, with Ripley, Newt, Hicks, and Bishop, well, half of Bishop, still in cryosleep aboard the Sulaco. The vessel's navigation system kind of malfunctions, sends them to a part of space claimed by the space commies, which Gibson calls the Union of Progressive Peoples, or the UPP. And then members of the UPP board the ship and are attacked by an alien facehugger hiding in Bishop's artificial entrails. So after destroying the facehugger, the UPP takes Bishop with them for further study. After this, the Sulaco docks at a space station called Anchor Point, where Hicks begins exploring and eventually makes the discovery that Weyland-Yutani are developing an alien army. And to remember, during all of this, like, Ripley's still in a coma, so that's why she's not factoring into many of these plot points.
I was just noticing that I was wondering if you were going to stick with space commies the whole entire time, but you've gone to UPP now.
Yeah, I like the UPP. You know UPP.
You know me.
Thank you. I'm glad somebody picked that up.
No, because I was going to leave that for Gary. I was like, no, that's a Gary. That's a Gary.
Eventually, Anchor Point and the UPP stations are overrun with aliens, and Hicks has to team up with the survivors to destroy them. And then the script ends with a teaser for a fourth movie where Bishop, who has now been repaired, tells Hicks that humans are united against a common enemy, and now they need to track the aliens to their source and destroy them, which opens up the possibilities to set the fourth film on the alien planet.
It turns into Starship Troopers.
That's
what happens.
Which would be cool, honestly.
Yeah.
And this screenplay, much like the one for Cameron's film, was very action-oriented, and over the years, it's really attracted a cult following on the internet because the idea of William Gibson writing an alien story is cool. That, what a cool story. So obviously that's going to pique people's interest, and they hunt it down and people read the script and all that. And then in 2018, this leads to the screenplay being adapted into a comic book series by Dark Horse Comics. And then in 2019, an audio drama based on the screenplay was produced by Audible, which saw both Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen return to voice their characters.
Except way older.
They both. That's the thing. You listened to this, right, Gary?
Yeah.
It's a fun listen. It's only like 2.5 hours, probably. It's not really an audiobook. It's an audio drama because there's like music and sound effects and all kinds of stuff. It's like a radio show essentially. Based on
it's like Orson Welles put this one on for
right. You. Yeah. And Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen both sound considerably more gravelly, which is saying something in the case of Lance Henriksen, who's had been gravelly voice since the womb, but but they both sound a lot older, but it's still kind of cool. Whoever's playing Ripley in that, I thought it was Sigourney Weaver at first because it sounds so much like her. It's kind of mind blowing.
Wow.
She got me with the first line or so. I was like, I can tell this is different, but then it starts where they're kind of repeating aliens.
Yeah.
To lead into this, and she starts saying some of those lines, and it's like, okay, wait a minute, she's definitely got it down. She's got the cadence and the everything. It's perfect.
She does a great job. Did you listen to this at all, Todd?
No, I wanted to save it for afterwards because to jump you mentioned
that'll lead a lot to the discussion.
Yeah. Well, the thing is
we're about to spoil the whole damn thing.
Yeah. Well, the thing is you mentioned the comic book, and I was like, oh, I do have that comic book. I remember having it and going over it some time ago, and then I was just like, before we started recording, I was like, oh, let me pull it up and scroll through it and just kind of refresh my memory, and I was like, oh, I haven't read this. I'm the idiot who bought it and didn't read it.
Yeah, and then you've known that we're recording an episode where we're going to discuss it the last 3 weeks, and you haven't bothered to crack it open.
Nope.
Cool.
Yeah, no. Why would I, Justin? Because I've read it already.
Going back to their voices though, Lance Henriksen is noticeably older, but you're like, he's old. He's an older guy. But Michael Biehn, God bless him, he caught me off guard when he first jumps in there because he's got kind of a cool voice, in all the movies. Oh, Ripley, what are we gonna do? We got to get out there and handle this. But then when he comes in on the audio drama, it's very much he's got the I'm Corporal Hicks.
It's real old man voice. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, Mr. Biehn, you've grown old.
Mr. Biehn, you need to drink some honey and some hot tea or something before you record. So, it's we'll talk more about the story of the screenplay in a second. But at the time, when William Gibson turned it in, the producers were not fully satisfied with the screenplay, so they asked Gibson to submit a second draft, which he did in January of 1988. This new version changes things here and there, fleshing out some of the characters and, oddly enough, dialing back the action a little bit, but the overall story beats were the same. But then that WGA strike that the producers had feared, it did come. It began in March of that year and lasted until August. By that time, by August, Fox had approached director Renny Harlin about directing the film based on his work on A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 4, which had become the highest grossing entry in the franchise so far. Harlin liked the idea of going in a completely different direction from the first two films, showing interest in visiting the alien homeworld or even having the aliens invade Earth. And he would later explain, there's a quote from Harlin, he says, "We would place the story on the planet that they really originate from and really explain what they are, and maybe they are not born to be bad at all." Which is so dumb. Like the idea of the xenomorphs being misunderstood.
Well, I was like, what is he trying to say here?
I don't know.
What is morality in like the xenomorph war? I mean, are they
they're
ever really
animals. They're-
bad?
right,
They're just trying to survive.
They're not like, I know the way that the xenomorphs have always been portrayed, they're not like, it's not like the Predator. Like the Predator is an intelligent human being, or not human being, but an intelligent being, who thinks and is logical like a human, whereas an alien, part of what's scary about the xenomorph is that they are animals.
Yeah.
And they don't need motivation for coming after you other than they want to kill and eat you and reproduce. That's their whole goal, is,
His pitch kind of, it sounds very Star Trek, of like, we can make friends and establish peace and maybe set up a base.
Yeah, but that's not what we want out of an alien.
No, it's
right.
So, I mean, I got no like personal issue with Renny Harlin or anything. I mean, Nightmare on Elm Street 4 is not my favorite one.
It's not the worst one.
It's not the worst one. You're right.
and
it's got some cool kills in it. I don't doubt that he can handle the movie. But.
Sure, yeah. I mean, Renny Harlin is a workman director, and some of his movies are good and some are not. Like Die Hard 2 kind of sucks. Long Kiss Goodnight is great. Cliffhanger is an absolute banger masterpiece of 90s action, in my opinion. Cutthroat Island, not great.
Yeah.
So he's hit.
Never saw it. I only ever heard how bad it was.
It destroyed an entire film studio.
Yeah, it was like newsworthy. It was like how awful it was, apparently. Anyway, that's another movie, but I guess that's for the Renny Harlin series.
Or that'll be a roulette episode maybe one day, Cutthroat Island. So Gibson was asked to work with Harlin on rewriting the script, but Gibson wasn't interested at this point. He was kind of tired of being jerked around by Alien 3's producers, becoming the first of many creatives who were attached to the film who would become frustrated with how the property was being handled. Giler later explained that, quote, "What we expected from Gibson was that we were going to get fabulous ideas, but the script would be a mess and we'd have to sort it out and fix it. What we got was a perfectly executed script that wasn't all that interesting." So essentially what he's saying is that the producers told Gibson that they were hiring him as a screenwriter when all they really wanted him for was to pitch a bunch of crazy ideas, which is frustrating and honestly dishonest. So you can understand why Gibson was ready to walk away from this.
Oh, yeah.
He'd spent a year pouring all of his creative energy into a project for producers who weren't being forthcoming with him. Mm-hmm. So that's, I would walk away too. I mean, he got paid for it, but he didn't want to continue and on this like roller coaster. He didn't want to continue being jerked around by these guys.
It sounds shitty, and it sounds shitty for like on a few levels. But like, I mean, it sounds like, I don't know. I'm hearing that, and I'm disagreeing with it, honestly, because I like a lot of what William Gibson was doing with the Alien franchise. B, it just sounds like you're being shitty for no reason there. That sounds like an awful thing to say. Also, if that's accurate, if that's really how you felt about it, perfectly executed script that wasn't interesting, I don't think they would have found the original Alien interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
well, that they wrote it. I mean, Walter, he wrote Alien, so I think he probably would have found it interesting.
I think that was all Dan O'Bannon.
Well, I mean, Dan O'Bannon came up with it. Go back and listen to our own episode, Gary. I'm not going to. Did you know that William Gibson was born here in South Carolina?
What?
I did not know that.
Yeah, he was born in Conway, which is down kind of the coast above Myrtle Beach, like in that area. Oh, okay. Yeah, Conway, South Carolina. William Gibson, South Carolina guy. Nice. How about that?
Isn't Robert Jordan from Is it Robert Jordan from here?
Yeah. I think so. Cause a bunch of his, this is off topic, but I remember after he passed away, a bunch of his personal effects got donated to the Mr. K's down the road, and they were selling they were selling a bunch of his like personal collection of books there. They weren't books that he wrote. They were just like stuff in his library.
It was what he used for like research for some of the Wheel of Time stuff.
Yeah.
I was developing a theory like in the middle of the episode that maybe South Carolina, that you just are wishing for something else so much more that you something create better. Huge fantasy worlds.
You got Grady Hendrix is doing it. You know, I mean, he moved to New York a long time ago, but he's another Charleston guy. Anyway, we're off topic again. This keeps happening. So while most of Gibson's script was thrown to the wayside, there was one concept that he introduced to the overall alien mythos that made it to the final version of the film, and that's of xenomorphs that are produced by animals. Because remember, all we've seen so far is xenomorphs reproduced by humans. Gibson's first Alien 3 draft featured an artificial jungle at Anchor Point, which contained primates. And as the station is overrun by aliens, some of the primates are infested by the xenomorphs. It's a small moment in the script, but it's a concept that would be picked up by other writers down the line. I do wish we had seen alien monkeys, I'll be honest, in the final film. That would have been great, but we didn't. So, Gary, Todd, I guess you're not part of this conversation since you didn't read your comic book, but Gary, what did you think of, since you listened to the audio drama, how do you think it would have worked as a feature film?
Honestly, it seemed a lot of fun to me, and not just because I do, for me, making fun of them for being old, which happens to us all. I love Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen, so I love the idea of them still being around. I think they're two of the best things that happened for Aliens. I mean, not that movie was bad or anything, but like just having two more cool characters is always a plus. I hated that for Alien 3 that we don't get them, but we'll get there anyway. And it seemed like clearly to me that Gibson, who a great mind, helped make cyberpunk a thing, and he seems like he's clearly a fan of Ridley Scott. He like leans more into what Alien was rather than Aliens, I think. Well, I take that back, because in the first draft of his script, and I'll probably mix these up in my head, but in the first draft of his script, there does seem to be a lot more insanity going on, but like the second draft, it's more lessened, like the amount of characters and what's going on and everything. It's more alien than Aliens, but I think that he added a lot to like of cool concepts to the mythology, or the mythos, as Justin called it earlier, or just the universe's like lore in general. Because I love the idea of like a good creature feature, but I do love that you learn more about the different factions in the universe, and that they're both kind of shitty. They're developing weapons and all of this stuff, and that the xenomorphs are really weapons developed by some other species, which is something that Ridley Scott wanted to explore anyway.
Yeah, I think that like Gibson does introduce a lot of very interesting elements to, like you said, to the universe of the xenomorphs and to Alien. I do think that, at least based on that audio drama, that he takes a little bit too long to get to the like alien stuff. So I think, like, you know, they said he had a lot of great ideas, but the script wasn't all that interesting. I think the story is interesting, but it takes a little bit. There's a lot of setup for what is essentially a sequel, because by the third film in a franchise, you don't need to be teasing the aliens. We've seen them in all their glory. You know what I mean? So I think he does take a little bit too long to get to the actual alien action part of it.
That's fair, because some of the stuff I think is cool for the lore. You're right, you do need to have the alien action going on.
Maybe needed a couple of set pieces early on or something like that to kind of like break it up a little bit.
Yeah, I was sitting here thinking about just the different concepts. Like, even just now, it came to me, like how there's the thing about the bug hunt. Like, they're talking about we're going to go on a bug hunt. But that's like the Marines are known for like going to planets and removing, quote, redundant species from planets to make room for colonists and stuff. I was like, wow, this has got some big ideas, like some
for sure, interesting
concepts. But also just for the creatures themselves, like that the alien thing becomes kind of like a virus, that it can be airborne, and
which is really a really cool concept.
Or that you could like turn into one, like it basically like the one like rips their skin off or whatever.
Yeah,
That
because there's
was one of-
basically his script introduces like an alien human hybrid, which
Yeah.
we will see, I guess, in full in Resurrection, right?
Yeah, in
Yeah.
Resurrection, it
Yeah.
comes back around. It almost
Yeah.
feels like in this one, like The Thing, a little bit.
Yeah,
Like it-
yeah, you're absolutely right, because you never know if somebody could be infected. So it is very much like The Thing in that way.
Yeah, it's weird though. Like most of my favorite stuff about what he was doing doesn't really make it anywhere in Alien 3, I don't think.
Most of it gets completely thrown out. I mean, there are some bits and pieces here and there, but the majority of his script doesn't get used, or even ideas don't get used at all. And I think that his script has enough like great ideas to where if it had gone through a couple more drafts, it probably could have been a really solid movie. But I do think that the pacing of that first and second act needed a little jump start. You know what I mean? Anyway,
It was good to have everybody back though. I was
it was
happy
nice.
to
Newt's there. You know, they introduced
Yeah.
a few very interesting like side characters, like the space commies, the UPPs, and all that. And like I don't know, it's a cool dynamic. It's a really cool idea, especially considering that they are very anti what the Colonial Marines stand for. So you have a conflict there and everything. I don't know, it's very cool, I think. So at this point, you know, Gibson's out. So the producers had to find someone else to write the script for the film. And their next move was to hire a writer who was more experienced in penning screenplays. They hired a screenwriter. And the man that they hired was Eric Red, who had written The Hitcher and Near Dark. So speaking of his script, Red would later say, "The basic problem when I was involved for 5 weeks was that the producers didn't know what they really wanted." And this is a sentiment, by the way, that you will hear over and over again throughout the development process on the film, is that the producers are hiring guys without really saying, hey, this is what we're looking for. Right?
They just know what they don't want. And they'll tell
Right.
you
Yeah. Yeah. So while Gibson had only been given a mere 3 months to turn in his first draft, Red was given an even shorter window, 2 months. And on top of the rush time frame, Alien 3's producers had been pretty unclear on what they were hoping from him. One piece of information that he was given by producers was that Ripley would not be the star of the film, since they were still unsure of Weaver's involvement. So, like Gibson, Red had to write around the character of Ripley, but instead of focusing on Hicks or, you know, any of the characters from Aliens, Eric Red decided to kill all of the survivors of the previous film off screen, including Ripley.
Of course, that'll mostly stick.
Yeah. So when Fincher's film eventually came out, one big point of contention was the off-screen killing of Hicks and Newt. But imagine how audiences would have felt if Red's script had been produced. In this version of the story, a xenomorph slaughters everyone on the Sulaco while they're in hypersleep. So there's no funeral like the one that Hicks and Newt get in the film. They're just kind of thrown away. Everyone, including Ripley, they're just like written off.
Jeez.
and it's insane.
I just think that that's like, I get that you want to do something different if you're the producers. That's ambitious, and you want to have like a worthy story for the next one. But for me, it always feels like with sequels that this is gonna just sound dumb that I'm about to say this, but I'm gonna. I'm watching the Species movies right now, and
Like all of them after part
yeah,
one.
well, we started with the first one just because the wife and I were like, "How long have you seen this?" I was like high school? I don't know. And so we.
What
watched
was your
the first
favorite
one,
part
like,
about that movie when you watched it during high school?
It was the lead actress and her acting ability.
Yeah, mine too.
There's an infinite amount of nudity in this movie, and it gets even more in the second one. Well, and that's where I was going to go. It's like the only thing that saves the second one. I don't even know if I can make it to part 3, but the only thing that saves the second one is that like Natasha Henstridge and Michael Madsen, like a few of the people return from the first one. So it feels like a movie. And I guess my point being here is that I get that you want to do something different, but this is no way to make friends, guys.
Right.
Like it feels like it's the immediate way to relegate yourself to, oh, it was just another one of the Alien sequels. You know,
Yeah,
right from the
it's
jump.
one thing if the second film had not been a direct, you know, had Ripley and, you know, had been directly related to the first film. Like the Predator franchise can get away with that, right? Because
Right.
Predator 2 immediately was just a completely different story where a predator was coming down to hunt people, right? So you didn't have to have the same guys. You didn't have to have Arnold come back. I'm sure they wanted him, but I know they wanted him. He turned it down. But so they just turned it into a whole new story with Danny Glover and Gary Busey,
Yep.
right? Gary Busey.
Yeah.
And then, so that opened up the Predator franchise to be able to like just tell stories where Predator comes down and starts hunting people, which is how we get like Prey, like a story that's completely unrelated, could not be more unrelated to the previous ones, but the franchise has already established that that's what it's doing. Alien was followed by Aliens, which features the same lead character. So at that point in the franchise, you kind of have to keep rolling with a continuous story.
Maybe I'm not being fair to it, but yeah, it feels like that the Alien franchise became just as much Ripley's movies as it did anybody else's.
Absolutely.
And the Xenomorph, just as a concept, the Predator works for, we've talked about this before already, but like the Predator works for being in different places all the time and just like exploring and finding stuff, and the Xenomorphs kind of get stumbled upon. So you can do that a few times, that somebody happens upon the Xenomorphs, I guess,
right?
But
yeah, it's like Die Hard 2, where Bruce Willis just happens to be in a airport on Christmas that's being taken over by terrorists like a year after the Nakatomi Plaza, right? like what are the chances of that happening?
Yeah.
So Eric Red, because he kills off all of these characters, he then has to introduce an all-new cast of characters, including a new protagonist, a special forces soldier with the rather bland name of Sam Smith. So after the opening on the Sulaco, where the remains of Ripley Newton Hicks are found and where many of Smith's men are slaughtered, the action moves to a small town that's been recreated inside of a biodome on a police station. So
now, if only they combined this movie with Biodome.
Oh man, Pauly Shore versus Xenomorphs?
Yeah. Stephen Baldwin, Pauly Shore, Xenomorphs.
Aliens versus the
alien,
Weasel.
Buddy.
People would pay good money to see Pauly Shore get obliterated by a Xenomorph, let's be honest.
People would have accepted him as a hero around this time, I think. I don't remember what year those movies were happening.
That was like early to mid 90s probably, so it was a little bit after this. I don't think he had, because Son-in-Law was like, oh God, we are getting off topic today. Son-in-Law was like his first starring role, right? Which was like probably like 93 or so.
Yeah.
Side note on that too, like, let's keep this tangents going. I just realized from in Son-in-Law the other day, for some reason I looked it up, and what's her name now?
Carla Gugino?
Yes. I was going to say, I had no idea she was the chick from Son-in-Law.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Oh my God.
Yeah. My one of my all-time favorite celebrity crushes. I just saw Lisa Frankenstein. She's in that. She's really good in it.
Nice.
The movie's okay. She's good in it.
Anyway, aliens.
So for the sake of time, I'm not going to go over all the details on this Eric Red script, but I will say that if the producers had been disappointed that Gibson didn't give them enough outlandish ideas, they certainly got their fair share of them from Red. In his script, military scientists are conducting experiments using face huggers on farm animals. Now, this may have been a concept that Red took from Gibson's draft, that the idea of, the xenomorph incubating inside of other animals. But Gibson never went so far as to include alien chickens, which Eric Red definitely does.
Which is one thing the series had been missing.
Alien chickens. He also introduces the idea that aliens can assimilate not just living things, but technology as well. So the military is hoping to use them to create, I don't know, xenomorph tanks or something. I know, it's very stupid. It's a very dumb concept.
On one hand, I want to that like maybe that comes from the H.R. Giger side of things. Like, he seems to have like an interest in the mechanical,
biological and mechanical. Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, come on. Like, that's
but
silly.
Yeah, he's definitely less in his script, less concerned with the science side of the fiction,
right?
Even simple stuff too. Like, I know there's like one part where somebody gets sucked out into space, but like it's like in Gibson's, he keeps it real and they get instantly freeze dried, but Red rolls around and he gets somebody out into space and they fucking explode because hell yeah, I guess. But he also never even bothers to explain in his script where the alien comes from. Like, like in Gibson's, you find out that like it's in the life pod or whatever with Bishop, and like so they give you like a story behind it, but it's just like, I feel like in Red's, and maybe I missed it somewhere, but it feels like it just kind of starts happening. Like it just, it's
no
like,
explanation.
There's an alien here.
Yep.
Yeah.
You guys came for an alien movie. I don't need to explain where the alien came from. You know it's going to be there.
Yeah.
Well, eventually this whole story turns into rednecks versus aliens is what it is,
Nice.
Which sounds cooler than it really is. But the because the story has these hillbilly residents of the small town biodome team up with the military to fight aliens who, unsurprisingly, end up going on a rampage. So at one point in the script, it is revealed that Sam Smith's father and his military superior, creatively named General John Smith. I have to just hope that this was a first draft and Eric Red was just putting in like random
placeholders.
He
placeholder
has
names.
to be, because you made me just now. I was just thinking that the Sulaco, the ship, like they're going to the space station Sulaco. And I'm like, you couldn't think of another name for the space station? Like,
We're going to use that
I ain't got
name.
time for names. Okay.
So,
I got 2 months and I ain't fucking thinking of another name. Sam Smith. Although I
figure
will
that
say,
out.
every time you say his name, I think of the singer.
singer.
So, of course I do.
So it's revealed that General John Smith has been keeping a secret. He voluntarily injected himself with xenomorph DNA, which transforms him into an alien-human hybrid. And then, and I am not making this shit up, a mosquito bites John and spreads the alien-hybrid DNA to all of the livestock. So we get alien cows, and then we find out that everyone in the town is turned into an alien-human monstrosity because an infected chicken fell into the town water supply.
I am okay.
Now I don't honestly, I kind of want to see this movie.
Yeah, I
was gonna
shut
say,
up and
hear
take
me
my
out.
money.
All right, hear me out.
Another alien
we all
movie
kind of want to see this, right? Like,
They never would have produced another Alien movie because this would have been so bad that it would have destroyed the franchise, but I kind of wish that it existed. And then this happens. And this, by the way, this is a direct quote from the script. 50 humans have been turned into an alien thing. They have fused together into one thing. It is a 2-story, moving, murderous mass of armor and flesh, eyeballs and tongues, screaming mouths and jackhammer jaws, and a huge amorphous blob of arms, legs, talons, hooks, snouts, and teeth.
I like the idea that the special effects crew is going to be reading this, and they're like, "What do you think he's going for here, man?"
Right?
I don't know.
It sounds like the end of Akira, is what it sounds like. So then this alien Katamari also begins fusing with the space station itself, which also comes to life. So
I'll give him props in that he like at least seems to be trying to head back into like the horror roots or something. Maybe.
Body horror, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
Tetsuo the Iron Man territory a little bit here. So after Smith and his family escape on board a space shuttle, there's one final twist. The space shuttle is also infected and it comes alive. So Smith manages to escape in a spacesuit. I don't know about his family. But Smith ends up, he might have left him behind. I don't know. He escapes in a spacesuit and launches a nuclear missile at the giant alien space station kaiju. And the movie ends. Roll credits. Whew. To his credit, Eric Red was very aware of the many flaws of his script, later saying in an interview, quote, "That's the one script that I completely disowned because it was not my script. It was a rush product of too many story conferences and interference with no time to write, and it turned out utter crap." So he's aware. He knows what he did. And by the way, like I said, this is a very small, you can read this whole script online if you want to. It's pretty easy to find. But one thing I did not mention was the Sub-Zero sex scene that happens during the climactic battle scene where both participants are murdered by a xenomorph just as they climax.
Heyo.
Which,
I also love, too, by the way, that, you mentioned rednecks versus aliens. It's like on this planet, for some freaking reason, they're using, like, I think he describes, like, there's guns like a Colt 45 and a Winchester repeater. Like, it's no explanation on that I can remember that we've clearly seen futuristic weapons already.
Yeah,
so
these guys are just really into
like
antique.
hundreds of years. Yeah, like hundreds of years old guns that they're using, like cowboys versus aliens or something now. And it's like, it's real weird. I'll give him props, though, that he does seem to explore a little bit more on the alien. I know it sounds stupid, but I was going to say, like, the aliens, their DNA mixing with other things. That's like kind of mentioned in Gibson's script a little bit. Red seems to run with that. That becomes a huge thing for, like, the toys. I remember, because for some reason there were alien toys. And
I remember, yeah.
Back when you could have an R-rated franchise and do this. And I had
Rambo toys. I had RoboCop toys. I had Terminator 2 toys. I had them all.
Yeah, but
All based on
I
movies I should
remember.
not have been watching.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so weird that those got made into toys. But I remember one of the ways they could convince you to buy more here, and I had a couple of friends who would buy some of them, is just like they would have like the different versions of aliens. Like you could have like a tiger alien, you know.
Did it
and
have
stuff
stripes?
Like, yeah, I think it did. Like there were like little features that were the same. But I remember there was a gorilla one that had like big arms, you know, and it had like the posture of a gorilla.
That's
But
silly.
it was the xenomorph head, you know. It's real weird. I think they may have even done that in the video games or something too. But yeah, it's
I'm going to
interesting
start
idea.
collecting those. That's my new goal now, is to collect all the animal alien toys.
I
want
would,
them all.
except before we started recording, we talked about how I cannot do this because I'm a completionist, and there were so many of those. I already know.
You got to have them all. So Harlan, Rennie Harlan, Guylaire Hill, none of them were very impressed with the script that Eric Red had written. So Eric Red was fired, and yet another screenwriter was brought in to have a go at it. And that writer was David Twohy, who at this time only had a couple of screenplays under his belt, including Critters 2 and Warlock, though he would later go on to write much bigger films such as The Fugitive, Waterworld, and G.I. Jane, and he is the writer-director behind Vin Diesel's Riddick franchise.
Nice.
So just to establish, we will have no David Twohy slander on this podcast.
Hey, I'm a fan of David Twohy. I love not just the Riddick movies, but he did a movie called The Arrival with Charlie Sheen. That's about an alien invasion that I think is really cool. And he did another one with Bruce Greenwood called Below that came out in the early 2000s. It's about a haunted submarine. What a great concept! A haunted
Nice.
submarine. You can't get out. You can't leave it. You can't get out of it. It's a great concept. It's a great little movie. Great little horror movie. So I'm a fan of that guy. I also love The Fugitive, and I'll be honest, I love Waterworld. I rewatched it a couple weeks ago. It's fun. It's a stupid movie. I like it. I don't remember G.I. Jane very much. I
I
remember
love G.I.
Demi
Jane.
Moore being bald. So I mean, it's Ridley Scott. So could be good.
G.I. Jane's dope. Man.
Yeah. I'm sure it is. I just haven't seen it in many years,
Oh,
so
okay.
I
I
can't
gotcha, I
speak
gotcha.
to its quality. Anyway, so David Twohy gets hired to work on Alien 3, and he was instructed to write his draft using Gibson's script as the starting point. But by this time, Cold War analogy was starting to feel a little bit dated, seeing as the Berlin Wall had fallen, and by the time the film was actually released, so had the Soviet Union. So it would have really felt dated by then. So Twohy changed his setting to a prison planet, which was being used for illegal experiments on the aliens to develop a biological weapon.
Well, Prison
Well-
Planet sounds familiar.
It does, yeah. We're getting into some familiar territory here. But Rennie Harlan did not like this approach, feeling that it was too similar to the previous films. Because remember, what Harlan really wanted was a story set on the alien homeworld, just like Ridley Scott. So, tired of the development hell that this project was stuck in, Harlan, like others before him, left the film, leaving the project without a director.
But he'll bounce
ju-
and he's got a cliffhanger to go direct, and
Well, I think
bit of
no,
a do,
next,
but he'll get to
yeah, he's going to do Die Hard 2
with Shane
next.
Black.
Yeah, he's doing Die Hard 2 next, but then he's moving on to.
They're not all
Br-
winners, but
They're not all winners. Cliffhanger is good though, isn't it? What a great movie.
It's been a while.
Cliffhanger's fun. Long Kiss Goodnight's good. I mean, we gave that credit to Shane Black mostly, I guess, but like
I mean, it would have been better if Shane Black had directed it instead of Rennie Harlan. I think. we can all agree with that. So
I will give David Twohy credit here. He does in his script seem to take it back down to one alien, so he's leaning into that Ridley Scott version and what Alien 3 ends up being, I guess. And then there's some characters in there that I was looking at some of the notes from it on the what's that? I forget the site now. The
Xenopedia
or whatever.
or something.
Xenopedia, yeah. And so I looked at notes on this one. I didn't actually see the actual script here, but they did talk about some aspects of his stuff seems to have been taken over to Resurrection a lot. Like in that Ridley Scott had wanted to do a thing where a hole gets punctured in the ship and somebody gets sucked through it, which is David Twohy puts in his script, but still it doesn't happen. And then it does get used in Resurrection finally.
It's such a weird scene in Resurrection too, isn't it? With that little
Yeah.
bit of flesh coming through the window, like a little wiggly.
Yes. Oh.
It's so gross to me for some reason.
Yeah, it's and then also I think Twohy's script had like the weird like deformed things. Like there was a scene where like deformed things in the glass tubes that were like
Yeah.
referencing like cloning happening and stuff like that.
That's all in Resurrection too. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, which will come back in Resurrection. Yeah, weird.
We'll have to
But
talk about
anyway.
Resurrection one day. I mean, we're on this Alien franchise thing, so
We might as
Well-
well. I mean, this is the
Yeah.
one we've just most naturally just gone
Yeah.
through.
we'll do a Jean-Pierre Jeunet series and do like City of Lost Children and Delicatessen and then Alien Resurrection. And, I don't know, that'd be fun, actually. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Note that down. Do y'all want to hear, our listeners, would you like to hear a Jean-Pierre Jeunet series? That would be fun. Yes, is the answer.
It's like, did you just answer for them?
I answered for them. So,
All right.
just like the scripts that had been turned in by Gibson and Red, Toohey's script did not feature Ripley at all, per Brandywine's instructions. But once the script made its way to Fox's president, Joe Roth, he hated the idea of an Alien movie without Ripley, saying, quote, Sigourney Weaver is the centerpiece of the series, and that Ripley was really the only female warrior that we have in our movie mythology, which I don't think is accurate, but I get the sentiment, you know. So Fox reached out to Weaver to try to make a deal, something that would persuade her to come on board for the sequel. Well, what got her on board was a big old paycheck. She was offered a $4 million salary plus a share of the box office receipts. Which she, you know, so that worked. That she said yes, but with some caveats. She needed the script to meet her standards, so she had to approve the script, and she didn't want the story to be dependent on guns. So, which is a weird thing for this, but I think we discussed it a little bit in our Aliens episode that she was very uncomfortable with the guns in that. But James
Yeah, she
Cameron
was
wasn't
like-
going to budge on the gun thing.
Yeah, I feel like there may have been something about she was an advocate for anti-gun violence stuff or something like that at one point.
Yeah. And if you've seen the final version of Alien 3, then you know that they did write a way for there not to be guns in it. So she got her way on that.
Yeah.
She also wanted Ripley to die at the end, by the way. That was another one of her stipulations, is that Ripley does not make it to Alien 4. All right. So they've got Weaver on board. So Toohey went about, you know, he's rewriting his screenplay, writing Ripley into the screenplay. Now, at this point, it felt like the project's getting to a pretty good place, right? They had the franchise's stars on board finally. They had a writer who's dutifully working on a screenplay. There was only one problem, is that Brandywine needed to find a director to replace Rennie Harlan. So in 1988, producer Walter Hill found himself at a screening of a film called The Navigator, a medieval odyssey, directed by a New Zealand native named Vincent Ward. Now, admittedly, before working on this series, I was pretty unfamiliar with Ward's work outside of What Dreams May Come, which is probably his most well-known film that he's directed. And I had never heard of The Navigator. But
It's where the kid like
Yeah.
gets on the spaceship
Yeah,
and like
that's the-
disappears for a while.
that's
And,
the flight
Paul
of the
Rubens
Navigator.
is a flight of the Navigator, not the same.
Is Paul Rubens the alien in that?
He is. He's the ship's voice.
Yeah, it's-
Like,
I don't
Yeah.
think I ever knew that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I'll just learn something. Thanks for that.
Are you-
Thanks for this educational moment.
Are you serious? You didn't know that?
I don't think I did. And I watched that movie all the time when I was a kid, but I was an idiot because I was a kid.
He even
I didn't
does
put
the
two and
laugh.
two
Go
together.
anywhere you want, Navigator. Ah!
That's it, Davey.
Uh,
Davey. Want to learn to swim? You got to
Why
jump
would
in the water.
anyone
Don't forget to feed
program
Bruiser.
why would anyone program a spaceship computer to sound like Pee Wee Herman? whose decision was that? Maybe that's just what people, whatever alien race that ship was from, that's just what they sounded like.
Yeah.
Maybe that was just a normal sounding dude.
And that
Anyway.
that's another version of Alien 3. They go to the home world and it's actually like populated with Paul Rubens.
It's all Paul Rubens.
Justin-
just Pee Wee.
Justin would have loved Prometheus if those guys had been.
Oh man, the big white alien dudes were all
Yeah,
Paul Rubens.
yeah. I was trying to think of what their names were.
The Rubens.
The Rubens.
See, anyway, I'd never really heard of this film. I really didn't even know the name of Vincent Ward. I only know that he did What Dreams May Come because I looked him up. But it did seem like The Navigator was very popular, at least in Australia and New Zealand, and it won several awards, including the Australian Film Institute Award for Best Film. And I did watch the movie, by the way, because I was curious about it. And it's a weird little movie, but it's very stylish, very cool looking, very quirky and strange. It's I don't know what it was that attracted Walter Hill Well, I don't know what it was about it that made him think, hey, this guy would be good to make Alien 3, and because it feels like if you wanted a movie that looked like Alien, or like The Navigator, then Alien 3 was going to look vastly different than any of the previous films had. But at any rate, he was impressed enough by the film to offer Ward a job directing Alien 3. So there was something about it that appealed to him that made him think this is the guy. So Ward, he reluctantly accepted, but he wasn't real big on Tui's script, so he started working up another idea, which involved Ripley's escape pod crashing on a monastery-like satellite. And he pitched this idea to Fox, who approved it, and Ward was officially hired by the studio, along with writer John Fasano, who was hired to expand this story idea into a screenplay. So Ward's vision of this satellite monastery was of a wooden planet that was intentionally archaic in design. According to Ward's official website, which, by the way, has an entire section dedicated to his version of Alien 3, so if you're curious about it, go check out Vincent Ward's website. But according to that website, the story went something like this. A monk on this satellite sees a star in the east, is what he refers to it as, believing at first that it's a good omen. In reality, this star turns out to be Ripley's escape pod, and her arrival, along with suggestions of an alien presence on the monastery, make the monk start to believe that they're undergoing some sort of religious trial, punishable by the creature who haunts them, who they think is, like the devil. So these guys are deeply religious, something stalking them on the monastery, and, we know it's the alien, but they think it's some sort of devil or demon, right? So they see all of this as being connected somehow.
Nice.
As in the final film, Ripley is the first woman to arrive among the all-male population in 10 years. So to avoid the, sexual temptation that she brings with her, they lock her in a dungeon-like sewer and, naturally, ignore her advice about the true nature of the monster that's roaming their satellite. So as you can tell by that short description, the story has some similar beats as the final film, with Ripley getting impregnated by the xenomorph and eventually sacrificing herself in order to kill it. So Fox did request an alternate ending where Ripley doesn't die, but remember, Weaver would only agree to be in the film if Ripley died at the end.
Yeah, sounds a little silly, but I will say, what thing with the impregnation thing, and I guess we could get into this further, but this one tried to explain, in 3, if you go from the earlier movies until this one, the alien thing happens pretty quick once it's in you. It comes out pretty fast, and
it's not like a long Mexican gestation period at all. Yeah,
yeah. But they try to explain it in this script as something about it when you eat, it makes it happen, and so she had not eaten in a long time or something. That's what makes it start happening. And
okay. Well, at least they attempted an explanation, I guess.
Yeah, it was something weird like that. But I think that I was reading that works in the first one, Ash is eating when it happens or whatever. But then it doesn't really work in the second one because there's some of the people that it pops out of are cocooned up, so they haven't been eating or anything. And
yeah, that's true.
Anyway,
so continuity wise doesn't quite work, but the continuity in this franchise is, let's be honest, spotty at best. Anyway,
you add what you need when you need it,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this version of the film got a lot further along in development than any of the other ones, with production drawings being produced by designer Norman Reynolds and sets beginning to be constructed. They're ready. They're building sets. However, this whole concept proved to be kind of divisive. The producers at Brandywine naturally questioned the logic of maintaining a wooden planet in space. How does that work? And then Fox executive John Landau called Ward's version more on the artsy-fartsy side than on the big commercial side, which, if you've seen The Navigator, will come as no surprise. So the producers suggested that Ward turn the isolated planet into an ore refinery and change the monks into prisoners, playing on, David Tui's prison planet idea that had come before. But Ward refused to make these changes and thus was fired. Yet another director fired. So the main plot of the finished film, however, still follows Ward's basic structure, and as you watch, you'll notice that Vincent Ward still receives a story by credit. So there's enough of his screenplay in the final film where he was at least given a story by credit. So what do you guys think of this version of the script? I mean, we obviously we know a little bit more about probably William Gibson's version than any of the other ones other than this one, because this one actually, like I said, they did move pretty far along in production before he left. Do you think this would have worked, this whole prison, like the whole wooden planet monastery thing? I think it would have been.
Yes, but not as an Alien movie.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, the whole the idea of a wooden planet, I feel like doesn't, or a wooden satellite or whatever you want to call it, doesn't quite fit in with this technological universe. It feels almost like more of a fantasy magic kind of thing.
Well, see, that's what I was thinking, because hearing that reminded me of, you guys remember Treasure Planet?
Yeah.
Where they had like the ships in outer space and stuff like that. I was like, that would have been a cool
steampunk kind of thing.
Like that universe. Yeah.
Yeah, but not in a
but
film
for
where,
an Alien movie, no.
I mean, we've already established that this is a very technology-driven universe, right, through the last two films.
Yeah.
So having a wooden planet all of a sudden seems a little weird. Also, what happens if you get termites?
Space termites.
You are fucked,
Space
right?
termites, yeah.
It's silly. It's a silly idea, but whatever. I mean, I like the I don't know, the monk thing. It's kind of interesting. It's a little like I don't know. It's a different perspective of like thinking it. So almost like in what we get with they call it the dragon and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely took the religious, even though in the final film, the guys are not monks, they have turned to religion during their time in prison. So they still get to use some of those ideas as a result, you know, without them being specifically like monks in a monastery.
Yeah, I saw a quote from Sigourney Weaver, though, where she talked about not liking Ward's script, saying, quote, "The elements were there, but there was no story, and certainly no story involving Ripley. He really did not know what to do with my character."
Yeah. So...
And, she was not a fan. Xenopedia, I think, was where I saw this at. They pointed out, too, that it looks like The Lost World, Jurassic Park, took a scene from the script where the mercenaries are attacked by velociraptors when they're walking through the big field of grass and things start like pulling them down.
Yeah.
And they said that's in the script, that like they're walking through like a big field of grass and like the aliens are out there, but like right below the surface of the grass and like pulling the mercenaries down.
I feel like that's been done in other movies too, besides just
it might be.
You know, I feel like that's like one of those scenes you see in a lot of stuff, or variations on that. I don't know that The Lost World pulled that direct.
I mean,
that'd be really random.
If it's done correctly, it's always cool.
Oh yeah, very cool. It's cool in The Lost World. The Lost World's got a lot of cool stuff in it for a movie that's not very good. It does. It's got some good scenes in it.
You might say the same about Alien 3.
Yeah, exactly. You could say the same about Alien 3. So by this point, Walter Hill and David Giler decided to just have a go at the script themselves. I mean, they're screenwriters. I don't know why it took them this long to do this, but they decided they're just, you know what? If you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. So that's where they're at. So they wrote a first draft trying to enhance the story structure on the Ward Fasano script, but feeling creatively drained, they hired on Highlander writer Larry Ferguson as a script doctor. Nice. So most folks involved in the production really disliked the work that Ferguson did on the script, including Weaver, who said that he made Ripley sound like a pissed-off gym teacher. With time running out due to Fox's insistence on hitting a set release date. By the way, setting a release date ahead of time is never works out in the movie's favor. It never has. I mean, Star Wars is the only one that maybe worked out well for it, and that's only because they went half insane trying to finish the special effects to hit that release date, right? But most of the time,
can't concentrate picturing Sigourney Weaver in underwear and a tank top with a whistle tied around her neck.
Gary, don't tell us your sexual fantasies. Here. Come on, this is not that kind of podcast.
All gym teachers pissed off anyway.
I mean, if they're a good gym teacher, they will be.
My elementary school gym teacher was never pissed off. He just didn't give a shit about anything at all, ever.
So Giler and Hill, they take Ferguson's script. They take it back, basically. Like they did not like this guy's script, so they take it. They once again took over screenwriting duties, and they fused elements of the Ward Fasano script with elements of Tui's Prison Planet scenario. Now, according to Wreckage and Rage, which is a really definitive documentary about the making of Alien 3, highly recommend checking it out. Weaver had a clause written into her contract that said that the final draft should be written by Hill and Giler, since she thought that they, you know, as the writers of the first film screenplay, were the only writers besides James Cameron who could write Ripley the way that she wanted. So even if they had gone with any of these previous screenwriters that we've mentioned, Giler and Hill would have to rewrite the final shooting script themselves, because that was a clause in Weaver's her contract, you know. So like, even if they had gone with William Gibson's script ideas, Giler and Hill would have rewritten it anyway. They would have rewritten the final shooting draft of it. So
look at Sigourney Weaver like swinging them big balls.
That's right. You know, they're like, hey, if you want me, these are. She says, these are my terms, and you know, and they wanted her bad enough to, as they should. I mean, you know, they needed Ripley in this movie, but so they needed to do whatever it took to get her in it. So all in all, by the time the film was released, Fox had spent $13 million on the writing of the film, with no less than 10 different writers working on the project. $13 million, and they just to get a script, you know. But when the film finally went before cameras in early 1991, it did so under the direction of a young up-and-coming director, one who showed a lot of talent and vision in the world of commercials and music videos, and one who presumably Fox felt was just green enough that they'd be able to control him. That director was, of course, a 28-year-old named David Fincher.
And that's where we'll pick up on part 2 of 3 of Alien 3. I'm just kidding. Kidding.
Not quite. So David Fincher was born in Denver, Colorado on August 28th, 1962. His mother, Claire, was a mental health nurse who worked in a drug addiction program, while his father, Howard, who everyone called Jack for some reason, was an author and the bureau chief for Life magazine. So he's got writing in his blood here, or creativity in his blood, I should say. When Fincher was just 2 years old, the Fincher family moved to Marin County, California, where coincidentally he actually lived just a couple of houses down from George Lucas. He's a few years younger than George Lucas, but they were neighbors actually at the time. Fincher was drawn to filmmaking at a young age. When he was about 7 years old, he saw a documentary about the filming of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and he had his first taste of how movies were made. You know, like he saw this documentary and he's like, oh, like people make these movies. You know, people, I had the similar experience with Terminator 2, because I remember seeing a bunch of behind the scenes stuff on that, and I was 8 or so years old, 9 years old when that came, something like that. And that was my first glimpse of like, oh man, like people have this as a job. They make these movies don't just appear out of thin air, you know, which is a silly thing to think. But when you're like 7 or 8 years old, you know, you're dumb as shit, you know. So,
yeah, I mean, with Superman, I remember the first time I saw Superman, I asked my dad how they did that, and he told me they just tied Christopher Reeve to a crane and swung him around.
I thought that he was on a glass table that was just it just didn't, you know, you couldn't see on the camera. He was just laying there, which honestly is more logical than a crane.
Yeah, you're right. Just the idea of swinging Christopher Reeve. Very dangerous.
So Fincher sees this documentary about the making of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and from that point on, making movies was all he ever wanted to do. And about a year later, his father gifted him his first camera, an 8mm film camera that he would use to shoot movies in his backyard. You should just take a shot every time we talk about a director making movies in his backyard with an 8mm film on this show, because it's in almost every director we've talked about, I think.
Oh yeah.
So just before high school, Fincher's family relocated again, this time to Ashland, Oregon. And in high school, Fincher spent his time directing plays, designing sets and lighting, working as a projectionist at the local movie theater, and as a production assistant at a local news station. But then after high school, he returned to Marin County, not to attend film school, but to get real-world, hands-on training in the business of making movies. And he landed a job as a production head at a studio owned by a director named John Cordy, who at the time was best known as the director of a television film called The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. This is back when television films were considered, they were a big deal. Like a television film in the 70s was not like, it's not like a Lifetime movie today. I mean, Steven Spielberg got to start making television movies. So With the experience that he gained working for Cordy, Fincher worked his way up to the title of visual effects producer, working on an animated film called Twice Upon a Time, which was directed by Cordy and produced by Fincher's childhood neighbor, George Lucas. So by the time he was 19 years old, an age when most of his contemporaries would have still been chugging along in film school, Fincher was working for Lucas's special effects company, Industrial Light and Magic, where he became an assistant cameraman and matte photographer, working on a few movies you may have heard of, Return of the Jedi, The Neverending Story, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So he's doing matte photography for all of these. But by 1984, Fincher and a few of his colleagues at ILM were looking for a change. They were kind of getting bored, and they were tired of neurotically sitting around waiting for whatever ILM project will come along next. And besides, Fincher had aspirations to be a director. That's all he ever wanted to do. He didn't want to be a matte photographer on other people's movies. He would later say, quote, "I don't want to be the guy who's loading the magazines for the guy who was shooting the scenes for the guy who had the whole thing in his head. I want to be the guy who had the whole thing in his head." So these ILM guys decided they'd make some pitches to organizations who might be willing to hire them on the cheap, specifically focusing on people who might be willing to spend money on public service announcements. So one day, while a bunch of these young ILM guys were sitting around a table having dinner, they started throwing out ideas, and they came up with the idea that they thought it was funny. They thought this was a funny idea, and they ended up pitching it. But the idea was basically just an image, the image of a fetus smoking a cigarette in utero. That was just this image that they came up with. So they're like, what, this could actually work. And they pitched the idea to the American Cancer Society, who loved the concept and gave the crew a budget of about $7,000 to create the ad.
And I will never forget it. It will haunt my dreams.
Did you see it when you were 3 years old in 1984?
No, I mean, I know that I had seen it, but now I watched it again just for this, and it's still so fucking weird looking.
It's cool.
It's effective.
Yeah, very effective.
We should put up some behind the scenes stuff of that too. I saw where they had that baby is way bigger than you would think.
Well, yeah, it's not baby sized.
Yeah, well, I don't know, unless you're a giant, you never know. Speaking of things that are really unique looking at too, I did mean to say when you were talking about Twice Upon a Time earlier, you should look up, if you're listening to this, look up the trailer for Twice Upon a Time. It is such a weird looking movie.
It really is. I've never seen the movie, but the trailer, it's bizarre looking.
Yeah, and I saw Henry Selick also worked on that too.
Oh wow,
Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline and stuff.
Yeah,
but it's just so different. That animation on there was kind of unique.
Really interesting.
Anyway, back to the giant baby, the smoking fetus.
All right, so this commercial was mostly filmed on the weekends with David Fincher directing, and the fetus itself was a puppet that was created by a sculptor named Tony McVeigh, who had worked on The Dark Crystal, Return of the Jedi, Richard Donner's Superman, among many other things that you've heard of, I promise. Look him up. This guy's kind of a legend in the special effects community. And this little 30-second commercial...
One of the famous McVeigh clan.
I hope there's no relation.
From Oklahoma.
So this little 30-second commercial.
I'm so sorry. I'm really off track now.
So this little 30-second American Cancer Society commercial, it caused a bit of an uproar, with both CBS and NBC refusing to air it on the grounds that it was too graphic and potentially offensive to their viewers.
I did see, specifically, they said it was general taste considerations.
Yeah.
That's how they worded it. They agreed with the importance and the intent of the message, but that it was too different visually for standard audiences or something weird. It was the way they worded it was so odd.
But the thing is that the commercial got a lot of press, partially because of this controversy, and it also won a lot of awards, and it brought Fincher to the attention of producers in Hollywood. And it wouldn't be long before he was fielding offers to come to Los Angeles to talk about doing some music videos. So Fincher up and moved to LA, signed with a video production company, hoping to have the opportunity to also work on more commercials, since it had seemed to work out for Ridley Scott, which was one of Fincher's heroes. Because Ridley Scott, of course, had gotten his start in England as an ad man working on commercials. But at the time, nobody wanted Fincher to do commercials, thinking that he wasn't experienced enough, so Fincher focused on getting his foot in the door of the growing music video industry, which was on the cusp of blowing up thanks to the popularity of the newly established MTV.
It's really disappointing nobody's made a t-shirt yet with the fetus alien inside of an egg, you know, like smoking a cigarette. Anyway, I'll start.
How are those improv classes on the weekends working out for you, Gary?
They're good. I gotta start going.
I gotta start showing up for them.
Right.
So Fincher's first music video was Rick Springfield's Bop Till You Drop, which depicts the Australian rocker as a savior figure in a post-apocalyptic future. And the video manages to invoke everything from H.R. Geiger to Fritz Lang's Metropolis and the Mad Max movies, but it really does also feel like a precursor for Fincher's later work on Alien 3. Like, it feels kind of similar, a similar aesthetic, I guess you could say.
I sat down with the wife and we watched all of these movies like straight, or music videos, all of his music videos like straight through, just like had a whole couple of hours of this, I guess.
Fincher-a-thon,
yeah, but I am amazed that for some reason I had literally never heard of this song before. I never heard it in my life.
It was a big enough hit to have a pretty expensive looking video.
Yeah, and no, it does. It does. It definitely feels like, Mad Max or something. But you can start to see, you can tell totally, you can easily believe this is the guy that's going to go on to do Alien 3.
Yeah, for sure. Fincher would work with Springfield several times over the next year or two, including as the director of his 1985 concert film, The Beat of the Live Drum, which incorporates Fincher's videos for Springfield in between the concert footage. And then in 1986, at the age of 24, he's only 24 years old, okay, Fincher co-founded Propaganda Films, one of the first production companies whose primary focus was to create music videos and commercials. Now, most of the directors who were hired on at Propaganda later graduated to feature film directing, including names like Michael Bay, Antoine Fuqua, Michel Gondry, Spike Jonze, Mark Romanek, Zack Snyder, a lot of guys you've heard of, basically. Then in 1988, Fincher worked with his first, like, real superstars. You know, like, Rick Springfield was well known, but he was probably bigger in, like, Australia than he ever was here. He had a couple of big hits here, but he wasn't, like, a superstar. But in 1988, Fincher worked with Sting, Steve Winwood, and Paula Abdul. So these were definitely, like, the biggest names he'd worked with so far. And then with Abdul in particular, Fincher found a collaboration that would be fruitful for both of them. Their first video together was It's Just the Way That You Love Me, followed by the iconic video for Straight Up.
Yeah, this is nuts. Like, the Paula Abdul videos are a little different. They look cool. And it's almost like, I think Straight Up had like two versions that I saw. And one like had kind of some of the Way That You Love Me like merged into it, it felt like. But the black and white version of Straight Up, I think
that's the most well-known one.
Yeah, I totally do remember that video pretty well. And and I think in '89 MTV Music Video Awards, he won like some insane amount of stuff. One thing I thought was cool when I was watching it, though, I was like, I know some of these people, and it has like Arsenio Hall, and but even more fun is I'm gonna mispronounce his name, so help me out. Djimon Hounsou, the guy from
from Amistad and a million other movies.
yeah. But he's in there too. And
nice. I didn't realize it. Well, all in all, Fincher would end up directing 5 videos for Paula Abdul, but that would not be his biggest collaboration of this time period, because in 1989, Fincher helmed the video for Madonna's Express Yourself, one of the most popular and iconic videos of the entire decade. This was Fincher working on the biggest scale that he'd ever worked on with one of the biggest stars in the world. And the two would also collaborate on the videos for Oh Father, Vogue, and Bad Girl, and according to some sources, were something of an item during this time while they were working together.
Justin, you do a lot of really good research, but I find it hard to believe that Madonna would get involved with somebody she's working with.
It's just out of character. It's a little out of character for her.
Yeah.
She's only like, I don't know. She's only had like a couple of partners that I'm aware of in her career. Yeah. See, I feel like now just Madonna is fantastic and good for her. I feel I don't want to sound like we're trying to I was trying to think of another term besides slut shame Madonna, but
that's the best term for where you were going with that thought.
Yeah, that's what it is. Anyway, I went down a rabbit hole of this Madonna stuff, and I was reading about like how successful her music was for some reason, like just and the music videos that she had, especially these with David Fincher, and it's crazy to me. Like I don't think people even realize, like, you know, a generation after us doesn't even know what MTV is or the concept of having a channel that just plays music videos, obviously. Right. But, you know, this video, like Express Yourself, I think, or it was like on, like it had to, like it was contractually, like it played at least every hour on the channel.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
Madonna said she had a choice in pretty much everything in that, but that's the one that like, also you could tell like had, you know, that influence for like, Metropolis or something.
Oh yeah, big time. It feels like Brazil a little bit, like the way the sets are built and stuff, which you know was probably also influenced by Metropolis, among other things.
Well, and I was gonna say, she says she had like full control of that, but I was like, that had to come from Fincher, right? Or like maybe Madonna really loves Fritz Lang. I don't know, but
he probably just had to sign off on every decision that was being made, I would imagine. Like I think probably Fincher came up with the concept, and she had to like give her approval for everything.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Oh Father video, and that one apparently didn't do as well, so they like pushed really hard for him to get Vogue done with her.
Yeah.
And so he had to do that. I think she was already on tour or something at the time, so they had to like really strategically plan that. But you know, that's considered one of the greatest music videos of all time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like it is instantly recognizable.
I really liked the Father video. I thought
it's great. They're all great. Yeah, they are.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Fincher would go on to become one of the biggest, most influential music video directors of the 80s and 90s, directing videos for the likes of Aerosmith, George Michael, Billy Idol, Michael Jackson, and the Rolling Stones.
Hey, and I love Freedom 90.
Dude, that video is first of all, I love that song, Freedom 90. Anyway, it's my favorite, like George Michael or Wham or anything. It's my favorite George Michael song, period.
Well, it's called Freedom 90 because Wham had a song called Freedom, but this Freedom 90 is different.
Because it's from 1990.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
So it's a great video, by the way. I mean, that video is just a bunch of supermodels singing the song. But like, you know, like David Fincher knew, like, you know what, how we're really going to sell this song is we're going to hire like 6 of the most attractive people in the world, and they're going to shoot it and they're going to sing it. And plus it's gorgeously shot. It's a great video. And it's like almost 7 minutes long. That's a long song, which I don't think I ever realized it was that long, but it is a really great video. I agree.
That's the one where I, or maybe not that one, but it definitely screamed like a lot of Fight Club vibes. I was like, okay.
Well, he's got this like kind of dark aesthetic that he would become known for, you know. I could see a little bit of that there for sure.
Yeah.
This that video too, by the way, was like, I think Cindy Crawford had appeared like publicly on screen, like maybe in like some Michael J. Fox thing earlier on, like very, very briefly. This is considered like her debut, like
really
on your screens, basically.
Hell of a debut. So to tell you just how successful David Fincher was as a music video director, in 1990, he had 3 separate videos nominated for the Video of the Year at the MTV Video Music Awards, a record that has never been broken and probably never will be because obviously the music video culture has changed so drastically. And for the record, those 3 videos were for Madonna's Vogue, Aerosmith's Janie's Got a Gun, and the decidedly less cool The End of Innocence by Don Henley.
Speak for yourself. Who doesn't love some Don Henley? Now, I actually
don't.
do think Boys of Summer is a really good song. I
hate
love
that song. I hate Boys of
What?
Summer.
How can
I
you
do.
hate
I don't
that
know.
song?
It's just one of those songs that grates me. I just do not like it.
I'm with you. Like, I think we share a hatred for Phil Collins, but like Boys of Summer is really good.
I disagree. But.
He did the VHS, like I used to have the VHS version of this, the big ones you could look at. I saw he was a director on there. That was the Aerosmith, like it was like a greatest hits album. Go ahead.
Was it because Janie's Got a Gun is on there?
It has him listed as the director of that whole video for some reason.
Oh,
it's got a bunch of music videos, and all I can figure, I was going to say, I couldn't like nail down exactly like what that meant, except I know that I used to, because I was very poor and lived in the middle of nowhere. So any VHS I had, I watched like a million times. So I remember the VHS, like it's concert footage. It's also like some behind the scenes stuff and all of that. Then it'll go to like a music video. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's like he had anything to do with the concert footage and the behind the scenes stuff or whatever. But
yeah,
I just thought I'd bring it up. It was interesting. I used to love that VHS.
So I want to talk a little bit about, and more in depth about, David Fincher's career as a music video and commercial director. Because unlike some of the directors we cover, let's say John Waters, for instance, or Alejandro Jodorowsky, I think in the case of David Fincher, I think all three of us are pretty well acquainted with his filmography. I think we've all seen the majority, if not all, of his films. So that gives us a different perspective, I think, in going back and watching all of these music videos that he made at the beginning of his career. So knowing, what we know about Fincher's films, how do you think his work on music videos reflects who we know that he will become as a director? Like, do you see glimpses of the man who would make Fight Club and The Social Network? Like, how did going back and watching these videos, how did they make you perceive Fincher as a director, knowing that this is where he got his start?
The two things that I noticed were him putting stuff between his subject and the camera, and then him putting something between his subject and a light source. Mm-hmm. So kind of increasing the textures, and that object between the camera and subject kind of creating a fourth wall, and thereby creating fourth wall, you break the fourth wall a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I think you see a lot of that. I mean, with the Freedom 90, like as these supermodels are sitting around this, what looks like just ready to be torn down apartment building, I kept thinking of the house in Fight Club.
Yeah.
I was like, they could be sitting in any corner of the house in Fight Club. But I know there was one shot, and I forget the music video specifically, but there was a really long pull-out sequence. And I was like, that is the opening shot of Fight Club.
In
the fierce center of the brain and all the way out.
Well, in Freedom 90, there's the video starts with the camera pulling backwards through a hole in a chair. Like there's like a chair that's like a wooden chair that's, and the camera pulls through it, which you see him do a lot later on. I mean, you see him do it a lot in Panic Room.
I was going to say, 100% what I noticed was like, obviously there's like, I feel like the first thing you would notice standing out is he has a really dark, like just the way things look dark, that the color, the palette that he uses, it feels like stays pretty similar on a lot of things. But the tracking shots, like I feel like he does that quite a bit. Like, and I think it even happens, I want to say in like, I already watched 7 not too long ago. I feel like I remember seeing some of that too. Like you could just, I don't know.
He does he's known for his dolly work. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that's a big one for him.
Yeah. I feel like David Fincher, when people start listing off great music video directors, you hear a lot of the same names. You hear Spike Jonze, Michel Gondry, Chris Cunningham, Mark Romanek, and all of them are fantastic music video directors. There's no doubt about that. But for some reason, when people start listing off music video directors, Fincher's name is rarely on that list. Now, it could be because Fincher has become more synonymous with film directing, so that's what people more associate him with than with his music videos, and with good reason. But I think you can't discount the work that he did in the field of music videos, and to a lesser extent commercials, because he didn't do nearly as many commercials as he did music videos. But it's maybe Fincher doesn't get that distinction because unlike a lot of those other directors that I just named, Fincher primarily made pop music videos. He's not making stuff for the White Stripes like Michel Gondry or Fatboy Slim like Spike Jonze or the Beastie Boys. He's making pop music. He's doing Paula Abdul and Madonna, and a lot of those other directors, a lot of those the things that they're known for, the videos that they're known for, are almost like little short films.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, they're great short films. And I think Mark Romanek might be the best music video director of all time, in my opinion. But Fincher's doing something a little bit different, you see, because he was very successful as a music video director. And he kind of had the distinction of honing his craft the whole time he was making these videos, perfecting the type of filmmaker that he wanted to be. So by the time he made his jump to feature films, his style and craft were already very well honed. And we're going to spend the next several weeks talking about Fincher's filmography, of course. And one thing that will undoubtedly come up time and time again is just how precise Fincher is as a filmmaker. It is above everything else. Precision is the defining feature of his directorial style. He's known for doing a lot of takes. He's known for using a lot of tripod shots and dolly shots. He uses very little, handheld footage. And he's known for a very rhythmic editing style. And all of that really started with his music videos. I mean, you were just talking about the dolly shot. Like that's a distinctive David Fincher thing.
And I do want to say, Justin, too, just real quick, if I could throw this in there. I was a little disappointed we didn't talk about this earlier on, but well before even Paula Abdul, perhaps one of David Fincher's greatest works is, for those that don't know, he did the video for She's Like the Wind by Patrick Swayze.
That's right. A masterpiece, if there ever was one.
Yeah. So just wanted to throw that in there, too, if you doubted his credentials.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, we mentioned the younger generation may not have a solid idea of MTV and what music videos were in those early days. A lot of times music videos were clips of concert footage and maybe the band playing in an old living room or, in somebody's backyard, it looked like from time to time, but it was just cobbled together shots. Just like you said, Justin, these things that David Fincher was doing were a higher form.
Yeah.
He really elevated that art form or the medium of the music video to be in line with maybe not high concept art films, but certainly more eye-catching.
Well, yeah, he's
with very much an artistic flair that didn't exist in other music videos. Hence all the awards and success.
Yeah, I mean, he is being very deliberate with everything that he does with these films.
Right.
Like take for example, we mentioned it before, but Vogue, Madonna's Vogue, one of the most famous music videos of all times, one of the all-time great pop music videos. Vogue is a masterclass in how to shoot and edit a music video. Every single cut that he makes, every movement that you see a dancer or Madonna make on screen in this video is in sync with the song. It's not just a series of shots of people singing the song. It is like the video itself moves, it flows with the song itself. It's really astounding once you start looking at how, there's a moment where he's like a butler at the beginning of the video is dusting a handrail, and the way his hand moves the duster is in beat with the song. Like, it's insane, like that level of precision. And the thing is, at the center of this whole video is, of course, Madonna. Now, Fincher came from doing commercials. He named his production company Propaganda Films. This is a salesman, right? And he knows that when he gets hired to make a video for Madonna, he's not there to make an artsy little short film. He's there to sell a product. And that product is Madonna and the song Vogue. And that's what he's doing. And he's doing everything he can to make the song, to make the experience of listening to the song better and to sell Madonna, right? And he knows how to do it, and he does it every single time. He knows how to cut around the vocals of the video. He knows how to cut around the choreography of the video. Like a lot of music videos, like I said, they are just a series of quick cuts that are flung together with little rhyme or reason. But Fincher is precise about every single decision that he makes, just as he will be on his feature films that we're going to be discussing over the course of this series. So if you start watching his music videos, you start to see an artist perfecting his craft, and you start seeing visual signatures that'll pop up again and again throughout his career, like that opening shot of Freedom 90, of that camera move through the chair. which just, yeah, looks cool, but he'll use it to great effect when he puts it in a narrative setting, like in Panic Room, right? It's almost like watching these music videos. They're like a microcosm of what he'll become as a feature director. And in my opinion, it's an important part of understanding him as a filmmaker. You know, this is a guy who I'm sure we'll have stories come up again and again about his reputation for being unrelenting and doing whatever it takes to get exactly what he wants on screen, even if it means making an actor do 40 takes. Because takes 1 through 39 were not quite what he wanted. And this is a guy who has the entire movie in his head, you know, and he knows exactly what every single shot wants to be, needs to be. So he's going to do whatever it takes to get him. He's a filmmaker who knows exactly what it takes to sell what he's trying to sell. And I think as you watch these music videos, you can see that obsessiveness begin. You can see where it started. It started from the very beginning.
Dude, it didn't click with me until you just said all of this. Just exactly what I was listening to some YouTube videos with people talking about David Fincher and just trying to get a handle on the guy. And one of the things I kept hearing was, and I don't want to, I did not think of this word for it, but the economy of filmmaking was like the way that it was worded. And that stuck with me. I was like, what does that mean? Because they were like, the economy of filmmaking that David Fincher has is and I think literally what they said was it's on the level of Spielberg, Kubrick, Kurosawa. And so they were like listing names like that. I think they said Orson Welles or something like that. And I was like, what does that mean? But I think that's it. Like just the precision that you do it. And I think the only person they said like, he's the best. The only person since then that's been as good as like Edgar Wright, I think is what they were saying. And just the precision and just, I don't know. I love that. So that's interesting. I mean, it just like clicked with me what that probably means, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Like just knowing exactly what needs to be on screen to tell the story. No matter what that means. I mean, Edgar Wright's actually a really good example, especially like they've got a very similar rhythmic editing style, obviously to very different ends, but, I could absolutely see that comparison there. And I don't know. I think it's going to be really fun discussing Fincher over the course of this series as we see that evolve. Now, obviously, the first movie that we're really going to talk about, Alien 3, it's going to be a little more complicated of a discussion regarding that because his vision is not fully in the final product, as we know.
I will say it's interesting that, we were talking about him selling the product, and it's like I was like, on one hand I was like, oh man, yeah, like look at the Paula Abdul videos, those are great too. Like they really sell Paula Abdul, especially for people that might only know her from, I don't know, whatever the show was, American Idol or whatever that she was doing. Right. Like you go back to that, and you can like you watch those videos now, and you're like, oh dang, she was really good. Like she's a superstar. But then it is funny that like George Michael in Freedom 90. Well, he's not in Freedom 90. So that's really interesting.
That's the thing. But at that point, he's just selling the experience of listening to the song because that's really what that video is about.
That's a good point.
Because all of his videos are about enhancing the experience of listening to the song. Like listening to Vogue is one thing, but watching the Vogue video is another thing, right? So by the time he got to Freedom 90, it's like, you know what? I'm just going to make a video about that experience of listening to the song that I've been working on all of these videos as a way to enhance that experience. So now I'm going to show people who are enjoying the song. And I'm just going to use the sexiest people alive.
Yeah, there you go. He did it. He also, by the way, just if you haven't seen the video for Vogue, he got in some trouble there because showed too much of Madonna. The nips were on there, and they asked him to remove that. I think she fought that or something. Dude, there was a whole thing about that. But hey, I researched that for the podcast only.
we appreciate the level of detail that you bring, Gary, like to your research.
Yeah. I am nothing if not a scientist when it comes to filmmaking. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
Yeah.
So after he had established himself as a reliable director, he was given the chance to direct more commercials, working regularly for big companies like Nike, Levi's, Budweiser, and Chanel. One of my personal favorites from this time period was a Colt 45 ad starring Billy D. Williams. It works every time. You've seen those commercials. They're great.
God dang, those were so good.
Yeah, I'm going to try to post some of these to our social media if I can, without getting in trouble. I'm going to try to post some of these old commercials and stuff. I can't post the music videos probably because I think they'd probably get removed from Instagram. But I think the commercials we could probably show.
We'll figure something out.
But
I will say this:
YouTube links on Twitter and Threads and stuff. We could to the music videos though.
I will say that I have never wanted a Colt 45 so bad.
Billy D. Williams will sell it to you.
It'll get you laid.
Every time. So it was his unprecedented success as a music video and commercial director that led to Fincher being offered his first chance to direct a feature-length film, and that film was, of course, Alien 3. And that's what
the whole experience
on our next episode. What?
I was going to say, and the whole experience is going to be magical.
Are you still just quoting the Colt 45 ad?
No, I was just saying. I mean, I feel like David Fincher finally got his break on a movie, and everything's.
Oh yeah, it was a wonderful experience that he loves talking about to this day.
Right.
So that's where we're going to pick up on our next episode as David Fincher joins the absolute shit show that was Alien 3. So that's it for this week, though. We're going to pick back up with the actual production of that film, and then we're going to get into the nitty gritty of his not his entire career, the next decade of his career or so.
I feel like you contradicted what I said about the Alien 3 experience, so I don't.
I did, yeah. Well, you were lying, so yeah, you were making shit up. That's all.
But he does get to work with extremely attractive people. I mean, it's Sigourney Weaver, so David Fincher is quite the stud in his.
Forrest Whitaker.
Forrest Whitaker.
Don't make that face, Todd.
Todd.
That's offensive to Forrest Whitaker.
Sorry.
It's so weird because Forrest Whitaker is also, when I was watching Species, I was thinking of Alien. I was like, oh yeah, this is like a movie that wishes it was Alien. And then Forrest Whitaker also in that movie too.
Yeah.
Original.
Wow. Well, guys, that's it for this week. We will pick back up with Alien 3 next week, and then we'll continue after that with the rest of David Fincher's filmography. But until then, you guys want to tell the listeners where you can be found on the internet?
Yeah, I am at This Is Gary Horde on all the social medias. I do stuff with the National Wrestling Alliance if you like wrestling. If you don't, you should.
Watch it on the CW app.
I was going to say we're now on the CWs. Get that app. You can.
I watched the season premiere. It's good stuff.
Hey, thanks for watching. And
Matt Cardona versus EC3 in a death match. It's cool.
The ultimate match of death, or if it's EC3, it's the ultimate match of death.
Yep, that's how he says it every time.
And they go all out on that match.
They sure do.
So you should check that out. And next week's going to be just as good. I don't know. I guess by the time this comes out, a couple episodes will probably already be out.
Yeah, by the time this comes out, episode 2 of NWA will already be out, and maybe episode 3. What days does it come out? Tuesdays.
Yeah.
Okay, so episode 3 will be dropping the day that this episode lands.
So check out the first 3 episodes of NWA Power on the CW. You can get it on Roku, Amazon, you can get it on Apple TV, you can get it on your iOS or Android apps, whatever.
Well, this has just become a commercial for the NWA.
Hey, well, what's the point of my existence if not to promote it every once in a while?
That's true. How about you, Todd?
If you're in the area, I run an open mic comedy night Friday nights at Not Just Gaming in Greer, South Carolina. Also, I am working my way through the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order on my show Computer Resume podcast. Now in its 3rd year. We just recorded our 3rd anniversary episode earlier today. It's available now wherever you get your podcasts and on all the socials at Computer Resume. And I'm on the socials at Mr. Todd A. Davis, Facebook, X, Instagram, Letterboxd, and D&D Beyond as long as they behave themselves.
And you can find me at Justin_Bishop on Instagram and Letterboxd. The show is at Cinema_Shock. That's Instagram, X, and Letterboxd now. So come follow us on Letterboxd at Cinema Shock. Check out all of our episodes as well as links to our Discord and our merchandise at cinemashock.net. Like, rate, review, all that bullshit. just send this episode to all your friends who love David Fincher music videos, or who love Madonna, or who love other
Paul Abdul
things. Paul Abdul.
Yeah,
And
lots
then-
of Paul Abdul fans gonna catch on to Cinema Shock after
That's
this.
right. That's right. Lots of Rick Springfield fans are just coming our way. Well, until next time,
May the wings of liberty never lose a feather.
and be excellent to each other.
Johnny has the keys at night, mostly.
What is that a reference to?
Oh, I thought I was the only one who didn't get it. Please do tell.
Really?
No.
That's Newt from the second Aliens movie.
I watched that so long ago. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
We're not talking about that. We're on the David Fincher.
Yeah, but I didn't want to do something from a movie we haven't talked about yet.
That's true.
So I did one.
You did
from-
it.
What if there's more than one option for Alien 3 and this was your chance?
Yep, you blew it.
Well, Newt's not in Alien 3.
Yeah, well, you
That's
didn't
not
have to pick
the point.
Newt. I'm saying there's other quotes that are in Alien 3.
Yeah, but we haven't talked about Alien 3 yet.
We have a
Then
little bit
fucking pick
for like
vote.
most of this episode.
Or something.
Yeah, you could have picked a
There's a-
Madonna quote or freedom.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start the whole thing over. I'll do a different quote.
Seeing all you have to do now is take these keys and make them true. There you go.
Oh my God, that was
Hey, there you go.
yeah.
Just-
Yeah, but you didn't say Johnny. You fucked it up, Justin.
Well, I mean, that was a first draft.
You could have said all Johnny has to do is take these
Yep.
keys, make them true somehow.
There you go.
Yeah.
We did your
Or-
job for you.
you guys don't even need
All Johnny has to see is that these keys don't belong to you and they don't belong to me.
Perfect. There you go.
Sounds like you guys are on board finally with Johnny as the key.
We have no choice at this point.
It's a thing now. It's been on a shirt, for God's sake.